Black lives matter. Black lives matter.
Yes, in Saudi Arabia, there are offenses, there are crimes. In addition to that, you can go to jail for liking a Facebook page of Christians, or befriending Shia, or writing an article saying, I like Christian people.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. The Struggle is shown on 30 cable stations from Vermont to New York City, on the internet at thestruggle.org, our YouTube channel, Struggle Video Media. Today's program will focus on Black Lives Matter and Saudi Arabia and Yemen. Days after a Texas policeman threw a teenager down on the ground at a swimming pool party, a Black Lives Matter took place in Hartford, Connecticut, and it shut down a major thoroughfare for an hour. Some 20 to 25 people took to the street across from the old State House.
No peace! No peace! No peace! Black lives matter! 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 Black lives matter!
I spoke to Bishop John Selders, one of the organizers of the protest.
We are at More Monday in Connecticut are continually upset and outraged by what has taken place in our country and what takes place even here in Connecticut. Police overreach and brutality is just over the top. And so those of us who care about Black lives and Black Lives Matter and the movement have joined together our voices and our bodies to be in the midst of this movement and this struggle for our democracy.
What are some of the specific abuses in the country or in Hartford that is most bothered you?
Sure, all of us have seen it. We've seen the senseless shooting and brutality of innocent people, unarmed folk, and those who are responsible for those kinds of actions, just literally getting off with no accountability. We're calling for accountability and transparency in policing and law enforcement across this country, and in particular here in Connecticut.
And what do you have to do today?
Raise the temperature just a little bit. Bring what Dr. King talked about, creative tension in the conversation, that we matter, that Black lives, they do matter, and we are a part of that movement to spread the word. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Many people couldn't risk arrest and held banners or chanted from the sidelines. Why did you come out today?
I came out because I am so tired of black kids and men and black people getting killed by police, and there being no real action on the part of the greater population. I'm just, it breaks my heart, and I'm sick of it.
Any particular abuses that really got you fired up?
Yeah, so the McKinney incident in Texas, a Dallas suburb, just where the 14-year-old black girl was pushed on her face by a police officer, just really struck me, because there's no difference to me between McKinney and West Hartford. It was a white suburb that could have happened, you know, in my town. So it's a national epidemic, and it's a problem.
What do you think these people are blocking the streets and risking arrest?
What do I think of it? I think it's wonderful. I mean, you need to shake the system to get any change. You know, so many people talk about being angry about this, but nothing happens. But when you push the system to its limits, then something might happen. When people get arrested, things happen.
Thank you.
Yep.
An astounding 15 police cars and vans and over 30 police officers arrived at the scene. This to deal with a protest initiated by clergymen where people stood and held hands and chanted slogans. Initially, police were going to set bail at each person for an astounding $5,000. That's more, 500 more, than Dennis Hastert had to pay in bail in his federal hush money case. Eventually, though, protesters were allowed to go on bail, PDA, promise to appear. In the end, 17 were arrested.
Are you more down the street? Oh, wait, I'm across the street from the Dunkin' Donuts. Give me a hug. AJ. We can't breathe. We can't breathe. We can't breathe.
This week, a federal judge ordered the immediate release of Albert Woodfox from Louisiana prisons. Woodfox is the last of the Angola Three, and he's been tortured by 43 years in prison, in solitary confinement, for a crime he apparently did not commit. Yet loathsome Louisiana officials are appealing the ruling. Here's something promising. A march in Newark, New Jersey on July 25th. It's involved with the Black Lives Matter movement. It's called Millions People March Against Police Brutality and Economic Inequality. More details in future programs. We started the program with an incident at a pool. Here's another one. We have this photo from B'Tselem. It shows a pool on the West Bank where hundreds of settlers, escorted by soldiers, arrived unannounced. The Palestinians there were forced to leave the pool at gunpoint so the settlers could enjoy a swim. This really happened. For the details, go to our Palestine-Israel archive on thestruggle.org. The United Nations has said that as a result of the Saudi blockade of Yemen, 5 million more people are desperate for food and water. This is a country that imports 90% of its food. The U.S. is fully involved on the side of the Saudi aggression, though it occasionally bleats about easing the siege, exactly the way it talks about Gaza. MEC sponsored a forum about Saudi Arabia at the Left Forum. The main section was a Skype interview with Saudi dissident Ali Al Ahmed. I'll be speaking to Ali Al Ahmed. He's a citizen of Saudi Arabia, a former political prisoner, and the executive director of the Gulf Institute, which is based in Washington. He's appeared on numerous TV programs, ranging from France 24 to CNN to Press TV. This interview was prepared for the Left Forum panel called The Extremist Regime Running Saudi Arabia and How to Expose It. Good evening.
Good evening, sir. Thank you for having me, and I'm sorry I couldn't be with you in New York.
Let's start with the title of this panel. The corporate media in the U.S. always talks about Saudi Arabia as being modernizers and a moderate force in Middle East affairs. But do you agree that the kingdom is in fact extremist?
Yes, the Saudi government is the source of, or the main source of extremism today around the world. In fact, if you compare Saudi Arabia to any other country in terms of exporting and creating extremists, Saudi Arabia is it. This is where we have the ideas and the ideology and funding and manpower of terrorist groups, especially ISIS and Al-Qaeda. The Saudi state was founded upon a reign of terror that killed between 300 to 400,000 people, supported by the British Empire at the time, and continued to espouse extremist ideology in its government through school books, publications, and even in the media. Just last month, the governor of the eastern province, the majority Shia province in Saudi Arabia, for example, stated that these people are the followers of the Jew Ibn Saba, and publicly called the majority of the province that he rules basically non-Muslim. As you probably heard of the bombing of the mosque, of the Shia mosque in the Eastern Province last Friday, that came as a result of Saudi generations of hatred. Why would a Saudi man aged 19 years old kill himself inside a mosque, bomb himself and kill people who are conducting prayer? There has been no relationship between him and these people. There was no attack from these people against him, but because
reading in the media about crimes and punishments in the kingdom, they're frankly hard to believe some of these things are actually done. So let me ask you about some of the crimes first and ask if they really are enforced. What I read: witchcraft, disobeying the ruler, a man meeting a man for a date, calling for an atheist thought, women driving, apostasy, and the offense of celebrating Christmas. Are all these things actually considered offenses?
Yes, in Saudi Arabia they are offenses, they are crimes. In addition to that, you can go to jail for liking a Facebook page of Christians, or befriending Shia, or writing an article saying I like Christian people. This actually happened. So things like that are crime. In Saudi Arabia, the court system is very backward. It is sectarian, and it's controlled by the government, and it's used as a way to control society and to keep it under the monarchy control. In Saudi Arabia, there is no law really. There is what I call the king's law. It's not Islam or culture. It's the king's law that allows the king to send anyone behind bars or to the gallows if he wishes to do that.
How about, you mentioned gallows, how about punishments? I read that there's lashing, stoning, beheading, amputation, eye gouging, and the displaying of executed bodies in public. Are these punishments still actually used?
Yes, the displaying, the beheading obviously happens almost now every day in public, in the street. And people could go and look at how recently a woman was beheaded in the middle of traffic while she was screaming, I'm not guilty, I'm not guilty. It's very much like ISIS style. Body are displayed. Just a few weeks ago, 3 expatriate workers were beheaded, and their body were put on display. Last year, 5 Yemenis were beheaded, and their body was strung up in front of the university in the south. So that these acts are really aimed at scaring the people and pushing them into submitting to the ruling family rule. Political goals.
Now let's change pace for a second. What about Israel? There was a report in the London Times a few years ago that the Saudis had practiced turning off their air defenses in case Israel wanted to fly over and bomb Iran. Is that believable?
I don't know how authentic this is, but what we know for sure is that Saudi Arabia and Israel have been secret lovers for many years, especially in the past few years. If you note that when the GCC leaders came to Washington, we saw how the pro-Israeli media have been really lovey-dovey with the summit, and even dumping on President Obama for not giving the GCC leaders more than they asked from in terms of stopping negotiating with the Iranians and reaching a nuclear deal. The relationship between Saudi Arabia and Israel is, like I said, a secret affair. These two countries have not attacked each other militarily, although they are close. There is only 7 kilometers that separate Saudi Arabia from Israel, and the Saudis never fought against the Israelis since 1948. And their policies match very well in the region, especially against the Iranians and against popular movements that are establishing or desire to establish democratic or popular governments in the region.
It's a good segue to some of the interventions. Now, we could talk about Bahrain, but I actually have a video of you we're going to show on Press TV about that intervention. But let's talk about Yemen. Why did the Saudis attack? Is it at all legal or justified?
It's not justified whatsoever, because there was no Yemeni attack on Saudi Arabia. What was happening in Yemen is after the Arab Spring, the Saudis and the Gulfis, supported by the United States, wanted to steal the revolution of the Yemeni people, and gave Ali Abdullah Saleh, the dictator who was in power since 1978, immunity, and installed his crony and Vice President Abdurrahman Mansour Hadi as president in a sham election. So when his reign ended last year, there was a lot of his failure to call for elections. I think what happened is some people in Yemen decided to push him off power, which is the Ansarullah movement. Many people call them Houthis, with other they are not alone, with other political powers in Yemen, causing Yemen to go into chaos. Saudi Arabia did not like Yemenis to take their own decision politically to go independent, if I may say, from the Saudi hegemony over Yemen that lasted since 1978. So the Saudis invaded really to recapture, to reoccupy Yemen politically, not necessarily militarily, and so it can decide for the Yemenis the type of their government and who can rule them. They have been doing that since 1978, and this is the real reason for the Saudi war on the Yemeni people.
And we see there's been a tremendous toll among Yemeni civilians.
Yes, absolutely. Unfortunately, the United States has been involved in this war from the beginning. They knew about it, and they are, the United States armed forces is sitting in the command and control in Riyadh, guiding and helping the Saudis wage this war. We know this from our sources. And we can confirm it, and I dare any U.S. reporter ask the Pentagon this question. You note one thing in terms of the Yemen war: it is the worst war really in recent history in terms of the death toll, in the destruction, and one most important thing is the lack of international media coverage. Even in Syria, which is very rough. You saw CNN, BBC, and other leading international news agencies. In Yemen, where there is no threat to these people, none of these media outlets are in Yemen reporting on this illegal war, which was waged with the support of the international community, based on what? Restoring. That was the excuse, restoring the government of Abdurrahman Mansour Hadi, a government that its term has ended in February 2014. So really, this is an example of international hypocrisy and disregard to the lives and welfare of the Yemeni people.
Okay, now the last question, but the $64,000 question. What does the regime fear? What might pressure it to change its ways? Would it be publicity or trade boycotts or the banning of arms sales? What would really worry the kingdom?
The Saudi monarchy is fearful of one thing, of people people's power. The reason that they fought and overthrew the Egyptian government under Mohammed Morsi was that they don't want a government based on popular choice. That's why they are invading and attacking Yemen. That's why they invaded Bahrain. That's why they are ruining Iraq with their terrorism. And they did that before. Any government that is based on people's choice, they're against for sure. And that's why they hate most the people who are pushing for an elected parliament, for more freedoms, for democracy, for a liberal political system. How can we bring an end to that? Is the Saudis spend a lot of money in the United States. They have an invisible power in the US and in Europe that allows them to portray themselves as moderate, as a protector of that land, although it's an absolute monarchy with no political participation of the people whatsoever, no freedoms to speak of, yet they are portrayed as moderate and reformers. We need to break that chain of media by pushing the media and pushing American politicians and shaming those who take money from the Saudis. Like, take example, the Carter Foundation, the Carter Center, and the Clinton Foundations, and others who take millions of dollars.
Naseer Alomari talked about the treatment of Shia citizens of the Saudi kingdom.
Ali is a friend of mine, and I happen to be Sunni, he happens to be Shia. We both agree that what's happening in Saudi Arabia is not good for Saudi Arabia, is not good for America. But I want to try to approach this from an American perspective a little bit. What is, I could talk about Saudi Arabia and what is happening inside Saudi Arabia for hours, and Ali did a wonderful job. He definitely had a first-hand experience with the oppressive regime of Saudi Arabia. So I could talk for hours about this, but you get the picture. It's horrendous inside Saudi Arabia. I have 25,000 followers on Twitter. Most of them are in Saudi Arabia, the Arab world in general, in Bahrain. And basically, as he said, some people are afraid to retweet something that says democracy, something that criticizes the government, anything that has to do with politics. So I don't need to, you get the picture of what's happening inside Saudi Arabia. I want to talk about this American-Saudi relationship and how this relationship, in my belief, has both affected the United States negatively, has harmed the United States, and has harmed the Saudi people, has harmed the region, and I believe if it continues, it will destabilize the region. But first, let's try to understand what this is about. Like, why would, as he said, why would 15, 14 Saudis attack the US, and the media would turn, against Afghanistan, against Pakistani intelligence, and you wouldn't hear, you hear whispers about Saudis, like we were attacked by Saudi Arabia, for heaven's sake. So you wouldn't hear it. But the demonstrators would go to a mosque here and demonstrate all day, and Fox News would, loves the story. But, for some reason, you would never find an American politician saying, we were attacked by this Wahhabi sect of Islam. That, that attack came from Saudi Arabia. You will never hear Mr. Obama or anybody else stand up and make a beautiful speech about the oppressive regime of Saudi Arabia. You'll never hear it, and you wonder why. So basically, my answer to that is the Saudi royal family is a great American foreign policy tool. It's a great tool because you operate it outside the American political system. You want money, you find all the money with the Saudi royal family. You can trace money. If you want them to support a certain cause, you have to go through Congress here. All you have to go through is a phone call with one of these royals, and they support whatever cause you want them to support. You want jihadis to go to Afghanistan under the radar? Well, you go to the Saudi royal family. So basically, we're talking about a lawless royal family which is willing to do whatever it takes to stay in power. And that is the motivation of the Saudi royal family. It's staying in power. It's not Islam, it's not God, it's not Allah, it's not love of America, it's not any of these things. It's staying in power, pure and simple. And they're willing.
One outrageous case of Saudi injustice is the treatment of Raif Badawi for the crime of writing a blog. Besides prison, he's sentenced to 1,000 lashes. Medea Benjamin talked about that case and other actions involving Code Pink.
I'm Medea Benjamin with Code Pink, and I thought those two presentations were really fantastic. We work very closely with Ali. I'm based in D.C., and he is constantly calling us up to say, so-and-so from the Saudi government or the embassy is going to be speaking at this hotel tonight. Get over there. And we get over there, and in our usual form, try to dress up nice and get inside there. And when there's some really fancy event happening, we pull out our signs and call the Saudi rulers the kind of criminals that they are. We also, when the first flogging happened, well, Raif Badawi, he was sentenced to 10 years and 1,000 lashes, and it was supposed to be 50 lashes a week on Fridays after Friday prayer in public spaces. I mean, you know, this regime is just beyond the pale. And so the first one they did, there was actually a hidden video that was taken of it. And when that was shown and went viral, the regime got embarrassed. And groups like Amnesty took this on, Human Rights Watch took it on, and there was a big campaign that was created. And so the immediate week following, when he was supposed to get his next 50 lashes, they didn't do them. And they said it's because his wounds hadn't healed from the first 50 lashes. So he wasn't healthy enough to get his lashes again. But really what it was is that there was this huge public outcry. There was mention about the Saudi crushing of other democracy movements. I have been in Bahrain, saw the beautiful outpouring of support for a democracy movement in that monarchy that is neighboring to the Saudis, and was there every night when the people would go out onto the streets, being tear-gassed every single day, being arrested and beaten up every single day, and yet they would go out again and again and again. The Saudis, with the okay from the U.S., went in with U.S. tanks, rolling into a foreign country and crushing that democracy movement. So it's not just what they're doing inside their own country, it's what they're doing to neighboring countries. Because I think out of this could come a group that wants to do some work on this issue together, and that would be to come up with a list of groups that take money from the Saudi government. Now, this list will be extensive. If you look just at the PR companies, it's the big firms like Hill and Naughton, Burston Marceller, the Corvus Communications Group, Fleischmann Communications, former congresspeople like the Texas Congressman Tom Laufer, lots of think tanks like the Middle East Policy Council, universities, NGOs. I mean, the list will be huge. I think we should make this list. I think we should start with the low-hanging fruits of ones that might be embarrassed when we publicly talk about them receiving Saudi money. And I think we have to make it a very dirty thing for people to be taking Saudi money.
Complete videos of each of the talks at our website. The arrow points the path. That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller, and this is The Struggle.